Hello and welcome to this learning resource. My name is Warren Davis, Senior Education Officer with the Commission. I'll be guiding you through this presentation. This presentation is one of a suite of learning resources related to provider obligations under the new Aged Care Act. The focus of this learning resource is to highlight the registration conditions and obligations for registered providers in the aged care sector, demonstrating how these requirements come together to form a broad regulatory landscape. We will also talk about how the Commission regulates, monitors and supports the sector, as well as how the process of auditing fits into the regulatory landscape. In the spirit of reconciliation, the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, water and community. We pay our respect to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. By the end of this session, you will be able to understand the Commission's vision, role and regulatory focus, describe the broader regulatory landscape under the new Aged Care Act, including the expectations and obligations of registered providers, understand how the Commission regulates and supports providers, and identify available resources. There are 3 sections to this presentation. Section 1 covers the broad regulatory landscape, as well as talking about the Commission's vision and role. Section 2 talks about how the Commission regulates and supports providers under the new Aged Care Act. This section also includes an overview of the new audit process. Section 3 concludes the session and points you towards additional resources to support you and set you up for success. That brings us to Section 1. Before we talk about the regulatory environment and an overview of auditing under the new Act, it's important to first consider the Commission's vision and role. Our vision is for older Australians across Australia to trust and have confidence that aged care services protect and enhance their safety, health and quality of life. Everyone has the right to safe, compassionate care. We preserve this right as it is important that individuals who use aged care are treated with the dignity and respect that we all deserve in our life. So, what does that mean? Our focus is the well-being and life satisfaction of older people who access your services and care in a range of settings, including residential care and home-based services. We aspire to a system which offers supportive, individualised care where older Australians have significant confidence in the services you deliver. As the national regulator of aged care services, we're focused on delivering a world-class sector that safeguards the welfare and rights of older Australians. We invest in engagement and education to build confidence and trust in aged care, empower people who use aged care, support providers to understand and comply with their obligations, and promote best practice care and services. It is important to understand that under the new Aged Care Act, obligations refers to the different requirements that registered providers, aged care workers and others who deliver funded aged care services need to meet. Obligations refers broadly to all the requirements in the Act, including statutory duties for providers and responsible persons, requirements of aged care workers to act in certain ways, obligations on digital platform operators and other responsibilities under the Aged Care Act 2024. Your obligations also include specific conditions on a provider's registration, which apply to different registration categories. Throughout this presentation, we will refer to these collectively as conditions and obligations. Some obligations under the new Aged Care Act are the same as under the current legislative framework, which includes Aged Care Act 1997, Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission Act 2018, the Quality of Care Principles 2014, User Rights Principles 2014, and Accountability Principles 2014. Other obligations are new to the new Aged Care Act. To meet many of the obligations under the new Aged Care Act, providers and responsible persons will need to comply with requirements included in subordinate legislation that sits under the new Act, also known as the Aged Care Rules 2025. For example, the strengthened aged care quality standards and the Aged Care Code of Conduct are contained within the rules. Some obligations apply to all registered providers, while others apply to certain types of providers depending on their registration categories. Registration categories will be highlighted later in this recording. It's also important to remember that registered providers will remain subject to all other state and federal laws that are relevant to your operations. This will include your obligations under the Privacy Act and any other state and territory legislation. Can you name some of the conditions and obligations you are required to meet and maintain other than auditing under the new Act as a registered provider? Pause the video here to take a moment and write down as many of your regulatory requirements as you can think of. How did you go with writing down the regulatory requirements you know of? Let's see how you went by having a more detailed look at the wide range of obligations and conditions for registered providers. The diagram on the slide captures some of the obligations and conditions for provider registration. It's a powerful visual and reminder of the many and varied obligations and conditions for providers of both home services and residential aged care. In the coming slides, we'll be talking about many of the elements included in the circle. We have grouped the elements into sections where there are connected themes, so it's easier to talk about. As we work our way through, think about how these requirements apply in your service. This slide shows an alternative visualization to the circle we just viewed and shows which conditions and obligations apply to all providers and which apply to only some providers. The items with a darker border are obligations and all other items are conditions of registration. It's important to remember that for each of the obligations listed here, the new Act and rules spells out the specific things providers should do to ensure they remain compliant in certain circumstances. For example, the obligation of delivery of funded aged care services includes obligations that are specific to different service types. It's important that you understand how each of these obligations will apply to you based on the service types you deliver. One thing we want to highlight at this point is that the strength and quality standards are just one condition which applies to providers. So, while meeting the strength and quality standards is an important condition of registration for many aged care providers, as this image reminds us, it is only one of a range of obligations and conditions. As we get closer to the passage of the new Act, it will be important to consider what new obligations will apply to you as a registered provider to ensure you're ready to transition. We'll mention a couple of these new obligations as examples. All providers will be subject to the new whistleblower protection obligations. This means it will be an offence under the new Act to cause detriment or threaten to cause detriment to any person who raises a concern with the Commission or other authority about a potential contravention of the Act. Providers will also be restricted from disclosing any identifiable information about a person who is eligible for these new whistleblower protections. For providers who deliver services involving meals in categories 1 and 4, new obligations will apply to ensure that any meals, snacks and beverages are nutritious and appetizing, having regard to the individual's needs and preferences. As these types of obligations are new, it's important that relevant providers prepare to be compliant before the passage of the new Act. Let's take a closer look at some of the conditions and obligations in a little more detail. There are several elements you need to consider in terms of your workforce requirements. Workforce and aged care worker requirements include registered providers having legal responsibilities to employ skilled staff and deliver safe and effective care and services. Providers need to have enough skilled staff to meet the general and clinical care needs of people they provide care to. Clinical care includes care by nurses and other health professionals. The Australian Government introduced mandatory workforce-related responsibilities for residential aged care providers in 2023. You can read more about these on our 24/7 Registered Nurse Cover and Care Minutes page. If you are a provider of residential aged care services, you have an important role in ensuring your residents and workers are protected against serious illness, hospitalisation or death from COVID and other preventable infections. This includes promoting the benefits and facilitating timely access to influenza and COVID vaccinations to both residents and staff. Additionally, you need to consider the conduct of your workforce. Let's look at the Code of Conduct in a bit more detail. The Code of Conduct prescribes how providers, their workers, volunteers and governing persons must behave and treat people receiving aged care. The care they provide must be free of all forms of violence, discrimination, exploitation, neglect, and sexual misconduct, and providers must take reasonable steps to prevent and respond to such behaviours. Our website includes further information for older people, workers, and providers about the Code of Conduct. The Statement of Rights is a critical and foundational obligation in the new Act aimed at ensuring the rights of individuals who receive care and services are respected and upheld. An individual is entitled to these rights when accessing or seeking to access funded aged care services. As a registered provider, you need to fully understand the Statement of Rights and embed practices within your service which align with the expectations against the Statement of Rights. It is a condition of your registration that you are able to demonstrate that you understand the rights of individuals and have in place practices to ensure that you act compatibly with the Statement of Rights. Your workforce should understand the rights of individuals and their role in delivering care and services aligned with and upholding those rights. Other requirements related to the rights of individuals receiving aged care services include ensuring you provide access to supporters and independent aged care advocates and the provision and protection of personal information. An example of this requirement would be to not disclose private and personal information such as health conditions or a person's financial situation without the consent of that individual. As an organisation and registered provider, your governing body must have a mix of members with diverse skills, experience and expertise. In addition, a mechanism for feedback from advisory bodies within your organisation must be part of any decision-making and continuous improvement strategies. This includes responding to advisory bodies in writing regarding their feedback and its use within the service. An example of this would be having a clinical committee that reviews and advises the governing body on clinical matters and is part of any decision-making in clinical areas of practice. Suitability of responsible persons refers to board, committee or trustee members being deemed suitable, meaning they are not disqualified from managing a corporation or being a responsible person. Responsible persons were called key personnel under the old framework. All providers have an obligation to consider the suitability of responsible persons at least once every 12 months, be satisfied they are suitable and keep a record. The link between the financial health of providers and the delivery of safe, high-quality care is well known. Residential aged care providers who hold refundable accommodation deposits and charge fees and receive payments must meet the prudential standards and their financial and prudential reporting responsibilities. An example of this condition would be a provider ensuring continuity of care is maintained regardless of an operational challenge such as unforeseen workforce shortages and needing to pay higher costs than forecasted for agency staff. That is, having the financial resources and contingencies in place to ensure no disruption to the quality or delivery of services they provide to older people occurs. There are 3 obligations which relate to the role of the provider, which are listed on the slide. Of these, 2 apply to all registered providers. They are cooperation with all stakeholders and regulatory bodies like the Commission and advising of change in circumstances. The changes that need to be notified depend on what type of provider you are and might include events materially affecting the provider's suitability, suitability of responsible persons, change in the responsible persons, organisational governance, scale of the provider, service types, associated providers, and financial and prudential matters. The 3rd obligation on the slide applies to some providers, specifically those who deliver direct care. The obligation requires your delivery of direct care to be as per agreement or contract with individuals. You can see these obligations in action when you have a significant issue in the circumstances of delivering safe and quality care, for example, a gastro outbreak at a service. You would then need to advise all relevant stakeholders and relevant regulatory bodies, including the Commission, of this development, and you would be expected to cooperate with the Commission and other regulatory bodies to manage and resolve the situation. A restrictive practice is to be used only as a last resort in the least restrictive form for the shortest time necessary to prevent harm to the older person or other persons and must be appropriately documented. Registered providers will have specific responsibilities relating to the use of restrictive practices under the new Aged Care Act. Many of these responsibilities are currently detailed in the Quality of Care Principles and will carry over to the new Act. Registered providers must understand and meet these obligations to ensure every older person's rights are respected and upheld. They receive person-centered behaviour support in accordance with their individual needs and the inappropriate use of restrictive practices is minimised. The requirements for restrictive practices sit alongside and complement other obligations that aged care providers must meet. This includes the strengthened aged care quality standards, the Statement of Rights, the Serious Incident Response Scheme, specifically the reportable incident inappropriate use of restrictive practices, which means any use of restrictive practice that is inconsistent with the requirements set out in the Quality of Care Principles, and the National Aged Care Mandatory Quality Indicator Program. Together, these requirements reinforce the rights of older people and the importance of safe, effective, and sustainable person-centred care and services, including behaviour support to minimise the inappropriate use of restrictive practices in aged care. When it comes to the requirements for incident management, all providers must have an effective system to prevent and respond to incidents with a focus on the safety and well-being of older people. On the slide, you can see some of the Commission's key pages that relate to this topic area, which feature a range of guidance and supporting materials. As part of your incident management approach, you need to consider the Serious Incident Response Scheme, or SIRS, which requires providers to notify the Commission when a reportable incident occurs or is alleged or suspected to have occurred. Once an incident notification is received, we assess the reported impact to the individual or individuals, the completeness of the information provided, the provider's response to the incident, and the effectiveness of the mitigation strategies. We then monitor provider compliance, including whether they are responding effectively to serious incidents. We respond quickly where we see any immediate risk or severe harm occurring to an older person receiving care. Providers also have a responsibility to report periodically to the Department of Health, Disability and Ageing. This includes National Aged Care Mandatory Quality Indicator Program, quarterly financial reporting, aged care financial reports, and provider operations report. The constitution of First Nations entities, or organisations that are wholly owned subsidiaries of another body corporate, known as a holding company, that is, not a registered provider, must require directors to operate in the best interest of individuals over those of the holding company. Having registered nurses is an obligation that applies to any registered provider in Category 6 delivering residential services. This specific obligation requires at least one registered nurse to be on site and on duty at all times at each residential aged care facility. This is called the 24/7 RN responsibility and recognises that individuals in residential services commonly need clinical assessment, monitoring or care at various points in time. When it comes to measuring the quality of service being provided and the experience of individuals receiving services, it is a condition of registration for all providers to demonstrate capability for and commitment to continuous improvement of the delivery of high quality care and services. All providers should consider continuous improvement as a critical underpinning aspect of the care and services you deliver, as it ensures that you identify risks and issues, identify solutions or changes you can make, and implement these effectively so your provision of care continues to be of the highest quality. In addition, providers in categories 4 to 6 must have a continuous improvement plan. Having both a culture and system in place that welcomes and responds to complaints and feedback, as well as having whistleblower provisions, is a condition that applies to all providers, with more prescriptive requirements now outlined in the new Act. Your effective management of complaints and feedback will provide you with valuable insights to deliver continuous improvement within your service. In the context of complaints and feedback, you must also consider what you have in place in the area of open disclosure, as this reinforces the process you take to understand an issue, find a resolution, and implement changes to prevent reoccurrence, all while operating in a manner which is transparent and consultative. The final requirement I want to draw your attention to is the strengthened aged care quality standards. We won't be discussing the strengthened quality standards in detail in this presentation. If you're looking for additional information on the strengthened quality standards, you can find a range of resources available on our website and through the Alice e-learning platform. This includes self-service packs to use at your service and a live learning session you can register for in Alice. We'll spend some time in section 2 talking about the audit process against the strengthened quality standards, as this forms part of the regulatory landscape. Before we look at that, we need to first understand the provider registration categories, as these affect which standards will apply to your service. As a registered provider, you will need to meet obligations based on the type of services you deliver. These obligations make providers accountable for the safety and quality of care they provide. The new system of obligations is intended to be proportionate to the environment a provider operates in, the services they deliver, and any risks of harm that may be present. Remember that your obligations to meet the aged care quality standards depends on the category of services you provide. For all registered providers in categories 4 to 6, meeting the aged care quality standards is a key requirement and directly relates to measuring the quality of care and the experience of individuals receiving services from registered providers in these categories. On the slide, you can see a QR code. Scan the code for more information on the new regulatory model. So, the key takeaway messages for this section are: there are many obligations and conditions related to attaining and maintaining registration as a provider. These requirements come together to form the regulatory landscape within which you operate and provide the foundation to ensure that individuals who access aged care are provided with the care and services they choose, and that services are delivered to a consistently high standard. Some conditions and obligations apply to all registered providers, others apply to some providers, and may depend on your registration category, the types of services you deliver, or the way that your organisation operates. You need to make sure you know which conditions and obligations apply to your organisation. Let's take a moment to stop and reflect. You could ask yourself these questions. Do you have processes in place that demonstrate you're meeting and monitoring all your requirements? How do you ensure processes in place are delivering the desired outcomes when it comes to meeting your requirements? What are your sources and/or forms of evidence to demonstrate you are meeting or exceeding your requirements? Take a moment to pause the video here and consider these questions. We'll now move on to the next section, how the Commission regulates and supports providers moving forward. As you can see, there are 4 key foundations of the new regulatory model. 1. Rights-based. Ensures the new regulatory model protects the rights of older people across Australia accessing aged care services. 2. Person-centred. Focuses on the unique needs, goals, values, preferences and dignity of older Australians. 3. Risk-based, preventing, detecting and correcting risks. And 4. Continuous improvement, a commitment to keep improving the aged care sector. These 4 foundations reflect the priority areas of the new regulatory model. The Commission aims to be fair, balanced and effective in its approach to regulation, and to use the right mix of regulatory tools to get the best results for older people. This approach is demonstrated in the Commission's Aged Care Regulatory Diamond. The diamond illustrates how we adopt a proportionate, fair and balanced response to risk when providers are willing and able to do the right thing, and we can see that they strive to deliver high quality care. The lower half of the diamond shows the high level of risk surveillance capacity and processes of the Commission. When things go wrong, we adopt a balanced regulatory response. This means that we protect older people by engaging with providers to ensure that they remedy the problem, restore trust and prevent reoccurrence, and in some cases we take enforcement actions to reinforce the protections. This can include conducting site inspections and employing a supervision model, which will be discussed later in this recording. Now let's look at the top section of the diamond. We know that most providers and workers strive to provide the best care they can, and many will sit within the top half of our regulatory diamond. You'll see that the top half of the diamond focuses on promoting and sharing good or best practice aged care and performance data about the sector to support and incentivise high quality care. This powerfully illustrates the Commission's greater focus on the aged care sector striving for excellence, not simply compliance. Let's consider an incident management scenario and how this might relate to the top half of the aged care regulatory diamond, where the focus is on the promotion and recognition of good practice. If, following an incident, your organisation's response is exemplary and demonstrates a high level of responsiveness, the Commission's response would be focused on recognising and celebrating this. You can see this represented in the purple section in the top half of the diamond. Similarly, if you identify a new or innovative way to manage and respond to an incident, the Commission's strategy is to celebrate and share these innovations with the sector, promoting better or best practice. This focus is represented in the light blue section of the apex of the diamond. You can see on this slide that the Commission has a wide range of both preventative and responsive strategies that we employ as part of risk surveillance of all providers. This is the Commission's risk analysis model. We assess risks by analysing that information to ensure that our responses are timely, proportionate and targeted. We respond to risks to older people through our full range of regulatory functions that target risks associated with problematic sector, provider and worker performance and behaviour. The sources of information that the Commission draws from to analyse risk are multiple: older people, workers, providers, regulatory intelligence and referrals and information from other agencies are all sources that the Commission draws upon to analyse risk. The Commission also employs risk profiling to bring together information and intelligence to develop a holistic understanding of service or provider risk, to predict risk and inform our preventative regulatory responses, and to assess new information about concerns with a provider's compliance. We use risk profiling to assist us in assessing the likelihood that a provider is managing the risks. Now let's look at an overview of the new audit methodology and audit process of the Commission. Some of the key features of the audit methodology to note are the Commission taking a no-surprise approach to audit visits. That is to say, moving forward, audit visits will be announced. Provider-level evidence will be gathered once. Service-level evidence will then be gathered to confirm that provider-level evidence systems and processes are in place and are achieving intended outcomes. Predictive grade assessments, which I'll talk to in the next couple of slides, which will be used as part of the audit process. It's also important to keep in mind that the purpose of audits is changing from assessment and monitoring, as they will now be used to inform registration decisions. It is important to note the distinction between conformance and compliance. Demonstrating conformance with the aged care quality standards is a part of the registration and renewal process and is assessed through audit. Compliance is a condition of registration for providers in categories 4 to 6 of service delivery. The Commission approaches audit against the strength and quality standards as a graded assessment, which includes the 4 levels listed on the screen. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see major and minor non-conformance. On the right-hand side of the screen, we have the conformance and exceeding gradings. The incorporation of the exceeding graded level of assessment illustrates the Commission's emphasis on recognising and celebrating excellence in service delivery moving forward. The evidence categories that the Commission can draw from to obtain evidence for auditing purposes are many and varied. Audit teams will collect a range of evidence from the following 8 evidence categories to validate and confirm providers are meeting the relevant aged care quality standards and outcomes. These evidence categories are experience of older people, governing body feedback, management feedback, worker feedback, third-party feedback, observations, documents and records, and care outcomes. As referred to previously in this presentation, the Commission is adopting a supervision model to guide the way we respond to provider risks and protect older people receiving aged care. Under the supervision model, we assign a supervision status to each provider. We base our decisions about a provider's supervision status on our assessment of the level of risk to the older people in their care and how willing and able they are to manage that risk. As you can see in the supervision model visual, all providers are subject to ongoing risk surveillance, even if we have not identified any particular risks. Providers with higher risk levels are subject to increased supervision and engagement from the Commission. We adjust how much supervision and engagement is needed depending on how well a provider manages risk to the older people in their care. Case management is a key part of the supervision model. We use case management to engage with providers to identify the causes of risk and non-compliance, set clear expectations for how they can improve, encourage quick and effective action, and monitor their progress. Our case management is focused on improved outcomes, informed by risk and led by data. It allows us to engage early and effectively with providers, support improved care, and reduce risk to older people. Finally, let's talk to some key messages we hope you take away from this presentation and share some resource links to support you to set you up for success. So the key takeaway messages for this presentation are that the Commission's new regulatory model is rights respecting and person centred. It has greater risk surveillance, response and support capabilities moving forward. It has a strong focus on continuous improvement and it includes a range of specific conditions and obligations. You need to make sure you know which of these apply to your organisation. Remember that the aged care quality standards only apply to providers in categories 4 through 6. And importantly, the audit process against the standards is only one of the conditions and obligations for registration for these providers. The new audit methodology and process of the Commission has been strengthened. It offers greater support for providers and a no surprises approach. I'd like to draw your attention to a couple of key resources where you can find more information. On the slide, you can see a link to the Commission's webpage. On this website, you will find a range of resources which include the Regulatory Strategy 24-25, where you can learn more about your obligations and our approach. A webinar page where we would encourage you to look at the recording and resources from the 18th of March 25 webinar on bringing the standards to life. The latest provider registration policy and the latest provider handbook. We would encourage you to look in the resource library for updated resources on all topics, including auditing and your regulatory obligations. You can also contact the Commission with the contact details included on this slide. We hope you found this video helpful and would encourage you to explore our other learning resources available through the Alice platform and the education section of our website. Take care.